Okay, so recently I mentioned that I had some information I was working on vetting and was going to make another video on, and I think that right now I'm comfortable enough with what I have vetted and what I've seen um, to go ahead and put this out there that right now Vladimir Putin. It's been mentioned, obviously, if you're in the community, if you've been around the subject of UFOs or ETs, or even Nibiru itself or Planet X, for any amount of time. You've always heard for past few years that Putin was on the verge of disclosure. So what has happened, and you can look this up for yourself if you simply do a quick Google search. Putin threatens to expose Nibiru. You'll get back about 282,000 articles about this. So I believe that in and of itself is probably enough to make the announcement here on our channel. However, I did want to get some type of real world proof that this rumor is true, but I believe I have that. So let's get right into it. Basically, this article states that in June, Vladimir Putin went to Russia today, blocked out 2 hours, and was tired of the BS and was just gonna put it out there and disclose on Nibiru. There was a big, obviously, the European and NATO leaders don't want that disclosed because of the effects it would have, obviously, on the planet and especially the Western world. The Eastern world in the developed countries, I believe, could handle it better than the Western developed countries, and then in the third world countries, obviously, it wouldn't make much of a difference either way in their daily lives. Actually, they'd probably come through the whole thing better than we would, because people here, if they were to truly know, if it was announced that something was going to happen and given a specific time frame, people would be preparing, like most of us have been for whatever amount of time that we have been involved in this. But people would just stop paying their taxes. They would stop going to work. They would prepare for the inevitable destruction of a lot of what we know as our daily lives. Anyway, Putin had blocked out a couple hours with RT to make this disclosure. So, number one, a couple hours with a president or leader of a nation talking is huge. So obviously, that was he was going to put some real deal information out there. Now, supposedly, Victoria Nuland was sent. Put him off, and then Obama went over and just basically offered him anything he wanted to just remain quiet. And the deal that was struck was that if Donald Trump wins the election, then Trump will announce or will disclose. Putin evidently, according to this article and the other articles, the similar other 282,000 articles related to this, that Putin feels that coming from the leader of the United States, it would be better received throughout the Western Europe and NATO countries, which basically are the countries with more money. If he came out and said it, while everybody in Russia certainly would take him at his word, and many other nations would, maybe not all of the NATO nations, maybe the United States would not. They would come out with some type of spin or whatever. But Trump evidently has agreed to disclose as his first act as president. Um, and Obama basically gave up a whole bunch of things just to keep Putin quiet for a while longer. Now, the reason, I mean, this is all obviously some pretty out there stuff, right? And this is why I wanted to vet it. And for me, what did it was the fact that we have this one particular paragraph here, and let's read this paragraph because I think this is probably the most important in the whole article. But it says the shadowy deal was almost consummated between the competing superpowers. If all information is accurate, Obama nearly sacrificed his political bargaining chips in exchange for Putin's eternal silence. Obama, our source confirmed, offered to disband ISIL, which we know as ISIS, here, a Syrian militant group covertly funded and armed by the United States. ISIL has long been the proverbial thorn in Putin's paw, so it is surprising that Putin did not leap at the chance to remove that threat from the current political climate. Furthermore, Obama offered to dismantle all ballistic missile defense shields in Eastern Europe. Now, that one sentence is why I am making this video. What has happened recently, up until today, is that we know that there's been a lot of back and forth over what's going on in Syria. Russia was going to pull out, and then all of a sudden now they're not only going to stay, they're going to put a permanent base in Syria, a permanent naval base in Syria, and they have also moved many long-range ballistic missiles right to the edge of their territory, all right there, pointing to Europe and, of course, over the Atlantic to England and eventually the United States. Now, of course, they could hit us from the other side, from Siberia. They could just pop them over the Pacific Ocean as well. But this last sentence here, the existence of these interceptor missiles has been a strong point of contention between Russia and the United States. That's talking about the missile system that Obama offered to take down. So if he took down the ballistic missile defense shields, and then all of a sudden, let me talk to that last sentence real quick. It says, additionally, and perhaps most shocking, Obama expressed a willingness to cede Alaska back to Russia, which I don't know how true that is or not. I would hope that is not true, but with Obama, nothing shocks me. I mean, I think he'd give away anything of the United States because I don't think he cares much about it, but that's just my personal opinion. But this sentence, the existence of the interceptor missiles has been a strong point of contention, obviously is true. And the sentence above it that says that Obama offered to dismantle the ballistic missile defense shields in Eastern Europe. Well, we read this, and then all of a sudden we see in the past couple days, it's came out in the news, Putin has moved a lot of ballistic missiles to the edge of his territories that are bordering NATO's territories. So now he has all these ballistic missiles right there on the edge of his territories. He's also claimed or said today that he's not pulling out of Syria. He's not only not pulling out, but he's going to keep a permanent base in Syria. So that to me says that there's something to this, that it is worth reporting on, because Putin's not stupid. He wouldn't be moving ballistic missiles to the edge of his territory in a very, very provocative move towards NATO. NATO would not normally put up with something like that. They're just not the type of we aren't the type of organization that would allow that to happen previously. But now all of a sudden he moves all of these ballistic missiles to the edge of the territory and nobody says anything. And he says, oh, now I'm not only going to not pull out of Syria, but I'm going to keep a permanent base there. And nothing, no chatter. Not a word from the White House all day today on this. So I believe that has vetted this particular report, and that the end all of this, what it comes out to is that if Trump wins, we will have Trump has agreed that his first act as president would be to disclose fully Nibiru to the world. It's right here. Trump promised a full Nibiru disclosure to the world as his first presidential act. Putin agreed that Trump's voice carries more weight and reaches a wider audience than his own, and therefore accepted Trump's promise. Now, we know that these two guys respect each other. They've both spoke very highly of each other in the news. If you haven't seen that, it's very easy to find. Just YouTube it. They both have a mutual respect going for each other. And Trump has made visits to Moscow. We know this. He's already over there talking to Vladimir Putin about this, or world events, let's say. We can't say for sure, what they're talking about. We weren't in the room, but what we can do is we can start connecting dots, and we can say that when Russia moves a buttload of ballistic missiles to the edge of Eastern Europe, and nobody does anything, NATO doesn't squawk about it, something might be going on. When he says that he's going to keep a permanent base in Syria, and nobody, Assad probably thinks that's probably a good thing right now. He's the only guy really willing to defend Assad right now is Putin. So with that, I believe that this is worth reporting on. So the other side of this is, if we have a Hillary win, then Putin will disclose within a day or two after the numbers are tallied. And we know who the winner is. So if Hillary wins, we should be on the lookout within the next few days for some word out of the Kremlin on Nibiru, which in a way is very, very scary, obviously, but in a way it's good to know that at least somebody's out there and wanting to put the real truth out to the people. Now, with that said, the other part of this breaking news that I believe has been vetted enough that we can at least start to talk about it is that I've recently learned that the ancient Phoenicians referred to Jupiter as Nibiru. And in many of their writings and in many times in history, they referred to Jupiter as Nibiru and Marduk. And obviously we know that Marduk is another name for Nibiru, or Planet X. It goes by many names: the Destroyer, Wormwood. We can call it what we want, but the interesting part here is that the Phoenicians called Jupiter Nibiru, and Jupiter is looked upon by many in the scientific community as a failed star because it is a gas giant. It is not a rocky planet with an atmosphere like ours. It is a gas giant. So this failed star sometimes has, like all planets, we move in a pretty normal pattern around the sun. Now, I've mentioned this in many, many, many of my videos, and at the risk of maybe overstating it, I do again want to put it out there that the universe and the solar system doesn't necessarily, it isn't like they taught it in science class. Now, we do revolve around the sun, in a particular way, but many people will, and let's take a look at the solar system. When you look at a map of the solar system or an image of our solar system, you're going to see a very flat looking trajectory of planets, something like this here, where you have the sun in the center and you have all these planets neatly moving around it, and it all looks very, very flat and very like, you know, we're all just sitting here, the sun sits there, and everything just revolves around it, and we're all very stationary. But that is not the case. And here's a really good one here, because this is something I really want to illustrate. Is right outside of Mars, we know that the asteroid belt sits, and then of course on the other side of the asteroid belt is Jupiter. So all of this is very, very relevant. So now, with that being said, I just want to remind you, if you haven't watched this video on the helical model, it's on my channel, you can check it out, but the important part of this is to watch how the sun travels through space, and we are all dragged behind the sun in a helical pattern. Now, think of this as flushing your toilet. When you flush your toilet, the water kind of swirls around and then goes down, you know, into the piping. So look at how this the sun really leads us through space. Okay, so now you can see here that the sun is moving, and it's not just moving back and forth or vibrating. It is on a course around the Milky Way. It is our solar system is moving around our galaxy, just like our planet is moving around our sun. So everything is in constant motion, right? So let's come back to this here. Now, we've all been taught that Nibiru is this planet that has this giant elongated orbit and only comes in every once in a while, and it's kind of like Pluto. Pluto has a very elongated orbit, and it is off center to the rest of the planets. Now, if you look at, let me see if I can find a really quick view of it here, because the it's kind of important, because they say that like the orbit of Pluto is very similar to the orbit of like Nibiru, that it's on a highly tilted orbit, as to where the rest of us are in this kind of, you can see here, we're in kind of this flat orbit around it. Now we know that the sun is moving through space, pulling us in a circle of a swirl, kind of like your toilet bowl, swirling all around it, behind it. But Pluto's orbit kind of goes like this. It doesn't go in a smooth circle, or the swirl effect doesn't really apply to Pluto, because it's outside of this a little bit, and it's coming in around the sun, and then it swings up and out, and everybody else is on this one plane, but Pluto's probably, you know, 8 or 10 degrees up, maybe even 12 or 15 degrees up and off of the plane. So it's at a really weird angle to the rest of the planets. Now, we've all been taught that, you know, if you followed Harrington's work, if you followed, you know, Farada's work, or even Sitchin's interpretations, a lot of that leads you to believe that the orbit of Nibiru or Planet X or Wormwood or whatever you'd like to call it, is in this, again, highly elliptical orbit that is off the plane of the rest of the planets. However, when we go to these ancient Phoenician writings and we see that Jupiter, which many consider a failed star, was called Nibiru by the Phoenicians, you begin to think, like, okay, is let me look at this from a different angle. Let's try and connect this dot. What if Nibiru is Jupiter, which kind of fits the bill, failed star, red dwarf, something like that, right? They always said Nibiru has its own planetary system, and or it's a star that comes through, and it has these planets around it, etc., etc. Well, obviously we know that Jupiter has many moons. Now, most people will tell you, that they can name probably 4 or 5 moons of Jupiter. I can probably name 4 or 5 moons of Jupiter, but very few people know that there's actually 67 moons of Jupiter. It has 67 objects orbiting it that are sizable enough to be called moons. Some of them like Io and Ganymede. Those are the Ganymede. I believe is actually the biggest. And Ganymede is like the size of Earth, so it's a pretty big moon. So you just imagine what Jupiter really is, the gravitational pull of Jupiter. So let's come back to what was that picture, because I think that was really good, a really good representation of what could be happening. Dang it! I hate that I lost it. But let's just pretend for a second that, and this will work right here, this one or this one, because you can see Earth, Mars, asteroid belt, Jupiter, right? And then same thing here. So let's take a look at this. We got our solar system. You can see Earth, you can see Jupiter. Now, Earth and Jupiter, this is not to scale because Jupiter is way, way, way bigger than Earth. But, let's see, no, that's not good. Okay, we'll stick here for a second. Alright, so, let's say that in this swirl that's happening here, that every once in a while, the asteroid belt's going to be right around somewhere, right? See this blue line here, I believe, is Earth. So we got Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. So right around in here somewhere, we have our asteroid belt. And then we got Jupiter, right? So Jupiter itself is towing around 67 little planets or moons, right? Of course, we can only name, 5 or whatever, or 4, or however many you can name, but most people think, it's got like 7 moons, or it's got like 11 moons, or something like that, but no, it's got 67 moons, 67 planets in tow, planetoids, planetary type objects, in tow around this monster planet, or failed star. And let's say that every once in a while its swirl dips inside the asteroid belt a little bit. Now, Earth, the distance from Earth to the Sun is 1 astronomical unit. So we know that 1 astronomical unit is about 93 million miles. So the asteroid belt itself is about 1 astronomical unit wide. So this distance here is about the distance of the asteroid belt, and then of course we have Mars on the inside of the asteroid belt. On the outside, you've got Jupiter and his 67 little buddies. So if Jupiter happens to dip into the asteroid belt every once in a while with his 67 friends, what do you think it would be like if, and of course the asteroid belt is made up of millions of little asteroids, and some of these asteroids are as big almost as planets or as moons. Now, Pluto itself is as big as some of these objects in the asteroid belts, which is kind of strange. Why would we not call those planets or planetoids when we call Pluto a planetoid or a subplanetary object or whatever we call it now? But so we've got this strange thing going on with definitions of planets based on their size or whatever. But to get away from that, or to not get railroaded off into another subject, let's say that in its swirl around the sun, Jupiter every once in a while and his 67 little buddies dip inside, boop, this asteroid belt. Well, what do you think happens? Probably a lot of collisions. Now, Jupiter's going to be putting off a lot of either electromagnetic energy or gravitational energy, gravitational force, which will either draw these into it or push them, repel them away. But you can imagine if this guy dips anywhere inside this asteroid belt, there's going to be a lot of commotion. And when that happens, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, obviously, hundreds, thousands of these asteroids are going to be disturbed and start heading in towards the sun. Others will be disturbed and start heading out. Thousands may head out as well. But a lot are going to head in, because if Jupiter is dipping in, it's going to either repel some of them in, some of its moons are going to crash into these, and it's going to be like a pool table in our solar system. When you have the pool, the ball's racked, and you're ready to break, and you strike the cue ball, and bang, you get a nice break, and they just spread all over the table, so everything's looking good, and you get a lot of good shots after that. Well, if that happens, and we get a good break, which would be really a bad break for us, then, of course, all of these little balls that were neatly racked into the asteroid belt will just start ping-ponging around the inner solar system, which would not be good, obviously, for any of our planets on the inside. But, of course, the only one we care about is Earth, because if something crashes into the other three, well, it's okay. Nobody's there. Nobody's home, as far as we know. So that is the second piece of information that I've been checking into, and I think is definitely worth doing some more reading on. That's what I'm working on right now, trying to relate this Phoenician references of Jupiter to Nibiru, and how could that be possible? Is it possible that Nibiru is not a planet or a planetary system that is just this 3,600-year orbit type deal? Maybe that's all BS. Maybe once every 3,600 years, or every 300 years, 360 years, if you follow Gil Broussard. Gil Broussard will definitely lead you to believe that, and I believe that Gil Broussard is correct, because his studies are the most scientific, in my opinion. Marshall Masters has done a pretty good job, but I believe Gil Broussard he's been in the position. He was an oil field engineer. He lived in Asia for a long time, so he had the opportunity while he was there. He got involved with studying Nibiru, and actually reading the Asian records. The Asians have the best celestial records of all of the civilizations that are alive today. The Asian records are the best. The Chinese, absolute top best. The other Asian countries, Korea and Japan, all have excellent celestial records as well, but China's are the absolute best, and obviously they use that for farming, knowing what was happening in the sky and the universe, tracking time, tracking comets that came through and things like that. But because comets were always considered harbingers of doom, and maybe with good reason. Maybe when they saw comets coming by, they knew that our friend Jupiter, or Planet X, was in the neighborhood. Now, we know right now that Jupiter is rising. Matter of fact, they made a movie about it last year. Was a crap movie, like went straight to DVD. I don't even think it hit the theaters, but which is very, very strange because it was packed with stars. It had Eddie Redmayne in it. It had Mila Kunis in it. It had Channing Tatum in it. So it was also had Sean Bean in it. A very, very star-studded cast in this movie. They spent a lot of money on this movie, and it never did anything. They never even really. I don't even remember seeing any marketing for it. It was just a movie that I happened to notice on Movie Phone that had come out on DVD, so I downloaded it and watched it, and it was actually a really good movie. Very interesting if you're a sci-fi person like myself. I enjoy science fiction movies, so from that perspective, it was very interesting. The plot was very interesting. However, one of the main points was that Jupiter was rising, and Jupiter is rising. It is ascending, and the main girl in the movie is her name is Jupiter Jones, and it goes into this whole thing. But I think that the main point is that they made the movie Jupiter Rising last year, 2015, and didn't try and put it out there. Didn't market it, but they did put it out there. We know, and as people have said for a long, long time, the powers that be will sometimes tell people things, and just to be able to say, hey, we told you, we made this whole movie about it, and, so don't act like you weren't warned. I don't know how true that is, but a lot of times it does kind of make sense. If you watch certain movies and then see what happens afterwards, it's almost like certain movies have set the tone for the times. And just to give an illustration of that, if you look at the number of divorces that were in the United States, and the number of divorce lawyers, and the amount of money that was generated from divorces before, like, 1980 whatever, when Kramer versus Kramer came out. Kramer versus Kramer came out, and then the War of the Roses came out. All of a sudden, divorce was kind of an in thing. Divorce lawyers just started coming out of the woodwork, and divorce became a big giant moneymaker. But it was preceded by these two big giant movies. So it's just one small dot that we maybe can connect and say, maybe things do come out in the movies, and then they happen in real life. Obviously, certain things do happen like that with, car phones or mobile phones and things like that. Obviously, those were devices that were used in movies and television, and then, became real objects. Now, not to say that that was planned that way, but perhaps it was. But back on target here, back to the subject. The movie came out, and Jupiter is actually rising or ascending right now in celestial terms. And if this theory is correct, where the Phoenicians were calling Jupiter planet, or excuse me, if they were calling it Nibiru, and if Jupiter really is Nibiru, it makes perfect sense for them to have published a lot of crazy studies and this and that, and oh yeah, it's this crazy planet that we don't ever get to see. It only comes around every once in a while, when really is right under our nose. And once in a while, it dips into this asteroid belt, which of course would cause chaos in the inner solar system, because it would just knock thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe tens of thousands, who knows, depending on how far it dips into this this asteroid belt. Now, we know that at its closest to Jupiter is about, I believe, 3.2 AU from the sun. Earth is 1 AU from this, exactly 1 AU from the sun, because that's how we define an AU. So that's 93 million miles. So you've got almost 300 million miles out there to Jupiter, but it dips in about 100 million miles. So it could easily disrupt hundreds of thousands of asteroids and knock them into the inner solar system, and which would cause chaos for years to come. So that is the theory that I'm looking into. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, because that could be a complete and total game changer. Nibiru being right under our nose the whole time, and us just calling it something different, calling, oh, it's Jupiter. Yeah, well, it's also got 67 little moons or planetoids around it, and when it does from time to time, as it absolutely does, because it at its closest, it gets, I think, to 1.6 or 1.8 AU from the sun. So that puts it squarely in the middle of the asteroid belt sometimes. Now, the asteroid belt does have holes in it, and it doesn't quite make a full ring, so it stretches for a distance, and then it dissipates. Sometimes when Jupiter dips in towards the sun in its normal travels and dips back out, maybe it doesn't disturb anything at all, and maybe 9 out of 10 times that happens. But that 10th time, when Jupiter dips in with his 67 little friends, you can guarantee that it is not a good time to be on the inside of the asteroid belt when that happens. I mean, it's pretty obvious. So you can connect those dots. Putting that together with the information about a possible disclosure from Putin, and seeing the moves that have happened the last couple of days, what Putin has actually done, it leads me to believe that there is validity to this story. There is also seeming to be some validity to the fact that, and there's a pretty good bit of references out there, that the Phoenicians were calling Nibiru, or Jupiter, Nibiru. So I need to get some better proof on that. I need to do a little bit more research on that, and I encourage you to do some research on that. Anything you find, please either contact us through the website, or www.planetxapproaches.com, or hit us up here on YouTube, post in the comment section. Let us know what you're finding. The only way that we're going to solve this riddle is together. No one person is probably going to be able to do this. Gil Broussard has dedicated his at least 20 some years of his life to studying this, and I think he's done just a darn fine job of it. But his theory fits, which, if I had to put my money on a theory, my money would be on Gil Broussard's theory. His theory says about every 360 years or so, and it varies. Sometimes it's 300, sometimes it's 410, sometimes it's 315, but it averages out about 360 years. Jupiter dips in, hits this asteroid belt. No. He says that Nibiru comes by every 360 years or so. But if we replace the word Nibiru with Jupiter, and we look at what's around Jupiter naturally and normally, and we think, well, if this just dips in every 360 years, has a little collision or so with the with the asteroid belt, well, then that's certainly going to cause some grief for the inner solar system. So, with that said, that is the breaking news. I will be putting out more videos on this subject and more Nibiru subject matter as it comes. Please.